right, looks like it's about time to get started. Looks like we have some attendees. That's a good thing. Welcome to my webinar. Thanks for joining. Today we're talking about the devil is in the details. So hopefully all you guys that are joining us today have decided that detail conversion is either not fun or time consuming or something where you have the need to take something typically from CAD or MicroStation or a DXF or something like that, and then turn that into something useful inside of Revit, right? And most of the time, people do that in a very bad way, especially if you have interns or something working with your company for the first time. They'll import a CAD file and they'll explode it directly inside of a working project, and that's a terrible, terrible workflow that nobody should be doing. Causes all kinds of potential problems, especially if you do hundreds of them. So today we're going to talk a little bit about kind of best practices on what to do for detail conversion. So if that's not an interest to you and you decide, oh, I'm in the wrong place, you could always leave. But there's always fun things to learn in my webinars, because I usually can go just inside and outside topics a little bit. I can also answer questions in the chat window if you guys have those. So areas of concern, if you see something or you hear something that you question or have a question on, throw it into the chat window, and usually I can get to those on a fairly timely basis. I did one of these on Tuesday, and we had probably 30 questions over the first 30 to 40 minutes. So like I say, if I need to go off topic for a moment, I can, but for the most part, we'll try to stick directly to kind of the point that we're trying to get here is, what do you actually do to get details into Revit and do that correctly? So my name is Bruce Johnson. I'm a senior MEP technical specialist. So don't let that fool you if you are doing architecture or structure or specialty equipment type trades or whatnot. Details are details, right? They're just drafting views inside of Revit. So everything that you'll see today will apply pretty much directly to all trades at this point. So I'll go to my next slide here. I kind of hate doing PowerPoints, so I keep them as simple as possible and as easy as possible. So our goals today are for best practices for detail conversion from CAD into Revit. So things that I want to challenge everybody to do or potentially do correctly is, number one, before you begin, have a plan, have a template, have pre-established standards that match your standards in your real projects, right? If you have tools, that can make things a lot easier than just doing it all manually. Have enough time and manpower. That one is quite interesting to me, because in my last firm that I worked with, we had something like 4,000 details, and we made this great plan because we bought a content management system that we were going to go through all of our details, look for all the duplicates, turn them into master details, error check them, and with all of our architects and engineers, we would go through and approve each one of those, and then we'd put them in our content library. And through all the committees and things we had, because we were close to a 1,000-person firm at that point, 4,000 details, they came up with a master plan to get all this work done as quickly and as expediently as possible, which turned out to be 2 details per week, which I was like, okay, if I do the math on that, that'll take us 5 years. So that was not my favorite day. So time and manpower is a critical piece. If you don't have time and manpower, contact your sales rep here at ATG or someone at ATG. We also do team augmentation, which means we can be an extension of your team. So if you guys are always busy on project work and you need your details to be more consistent, standardized, and stored in a convenient place per discipline or whatnot, we could definitely help you out with that. That's something we can do externally to your current firm, even share through like BIM 360 for file storage and things like that to actually work on those projects with you. Also have a deadline. If you have an arbitrary, oh, we got 1,000 details that we're going to convert from CAD to Revit, and we're going to do that this year, and we're going to hire a couple interns this summer, and those are going to be directed by the engineers, and by the time they go back to school in the fall, then we'll have all our details done. I would say that's a poor concept for having a deadline. I would say if you're going to do this work and you're going to have a deadline, specifically say, I'm going to do, say, 200 details a week, and I'm going to use these resources. Make sure that those things are actually happening. If they miss the deadline, it's not like that's a critical thing in most cases. It's an arbitrary one, but at least it's a deadline and you have a goal to meet. If you don't do that, typically this process takes a long time, and it stretches out the need for employees to think of, well, I don't have this detail now in my master library. Where am I going to get it from? Oh, I'm going to get it from my last project, right? Well, what if that last project was a healthcare project from 6 years ago? And now you're looking at a Revit model that you're going to try to go extract that from that's 6 years old, going into a newer version of Revit. Is it going to transfer properly? Is it not? Things like that can cause issues, as well as the relevancy or currency of that detail, which basically means that it could have been a completely different code 6 years ago than what you have now, and the detail isn't actually up to date, and you're going to have to do a lot of editing on that. So having a master detail library of some sort that is approved by engineers, architects, right? That's going to be a helpful thing to have for a firm. You always know where to go for every job. It's always the master detail library. So it's a good thing to have a plan for storage as well. Like I was just saying, that if you have a master detail library, you should have a place to go find everything and never have to go back into previous projects unless it was a detail only created for that kind of project and it doesn't really exist in your master detail library. It was never put in there. That would be the only reason you'd go back in time, right? And then execute the plan, make it happen. Don't just kind of think of it as a wish list item. Actually do make a plan, because it's going to help with standards for your firm. It's going to make for better consistency of drawings. You may have less errors and omissions, which causes your insurance to go up if you get sued because of something you left out or didn't change to the proper codes or whatnot. So those are kind of things that I kind of focus on, that those are your reasons to really get this done. And if you don't have the team or the manpower to do that, but you do have lots and lots and lots of CAD details, you could still just link them in, right? One CAD file link into each detail point, but then you've got hundreds and hundreds of CAD details that you're linking into Revit, as opposed to importing and exploding and changing. Then you're maintaining work in CAD as well as inside of Revit. You got two platforms to work on, and more often than not, people don't want to work on two platforms if they don't have to. So good stuff to know. So again, don't necessarily like to do PowerPoints all that much. So I'm going to jump into Revit and we'll take a peek at what we have. And instead of just thinking Revit alone, because we're coming from CAD, I'm also going to drop my AutoCAD 19 version in here and then take a peek at a folder I've got. I've got 10 AutoCAD files here that are all details. Got some submersible pumps, some slop tanks, interceptors. This came from a plumbing set of details that I did probably, I'm gonna guess 10 years ago, so these are old files. But I still had them sitting on my computer, so I figured I would do them as a bulk insert conversion kind of a thing inside of Revit. So one of the things I like to do first before anything else is take, say, a sample and open it up and see what I have. So if I open this up in AutoCAD and I go to my model view, I've got some basic information in here. I've got some hatches. I've got leaders, arrowheads. I've got a text style. My text style is simplex, pretty simple, right? Simplex, duplex, Times New Romans, all those types that may have been used in CAD. I could have a bunch of those across hundreds or even thousands of details. So I need to kind of know what those are. Do I have M text in there? So it's truly paragraphic text, or is it just a single line of text? I believe most of these are all going to be M text. Occasionally, when I do a conversion of these, I will have in Revit a piece of text like this show up with the extents like way out here. So even though just the 4 lines of code are still paragraphic like they were, I'd have a text box window that's way, way far over there, and it's not something I want to have to deal with. So rather than having to deal with really weird text boxes, I will usually explode all my text that is M text. And if I have any specialty hatch patterns or something that I know are not going to transfer for whatever reason, I'll typically explode those as well and turn those into line work inside of Revit. If I have little itty bitty bits, little circles or little tips and things like that in there, every once in a while I'll get a message inside of Revit that says that those lines are too small to generate graphics, and they'll delete them automatically. So I'll get some odd looking hatches from time to time. But anything that's a hatch, looks like some of this hatch is already exploded. But this one's still solid. So I'm just kind of looking for what are my gotchas that are gonna hit me when I get into my Revit session. So ahead of time, I could just swipe this entire thing due to my text being potentially strange. Go into a quick select in AutoCAD, find all of my M text and make it a selection set, hit my X enter for explode, and now it's all individual lines of text, which will be a little bit more cumbersome to put them all back together as one paragraph later, but at least I don't get these super wide text boxes that are very hard to manage. So that'd be some pre-work that I could do inside of AutoCAD first. I'm just going to kill that because I've already done some of this work in my Revit session. So anything that's additional blocks in there that once inside Revit, they turn into more blocks that need to be exploded more than one time. Those are things that I need to be a little bit cognizant of. I could go back after doing an initial conversion potentially and do a fix on those on all the rest of my CAD drawings before I would import them. But usually I'm going to do at least one conversion completely manually first, and then I'll actually know. Somebody's just asking why explode the hatch patterns in M-text. You can change them in transfer in Revit. I'll be able to show that in just a minute. If I have like the earth hatch pattern, I would leave that intact and just swap that material or that pattern, fill pattern, with the one in Revit. But there's a lot of times when those patterns do not transfer. So as you do a couple of them manually, if you have one that has a lot of different fill patterns, I would go through and try to swap those out with something that Revit has. A lot of times you'll have patterns that don't match between Revit and AutoCAD. You may even have to create new patterns from time to time inside of Revit. If you don't want to create new patterns, you could just explode them ahead of time in CAD and then not have to worry about a pattern. It would just be those bazillion little line segments that need to go potentially on a line style that works within Revit at that point. So let me get back to my syllabus for the class here real quick. All right, so anything AutoCAD based that you need to do as prep, again, you're gonna have to kind of find your way through the process the first couple times you do the detail conversion if you've never done it before, just to make sure that the things you're getting from CAD are going to translate well into Revit. Once you've kind of done that a few times and know what to expect, that's when you can go back into your CAD files and do great things with them. Again, you could create the from the M text a regular text entity, but a lot of times those objects will have really stretched out windows of text, and to go back and fix those is not my most favorite thing. So we'll see that in just a moment. As far as the process on the Revit side goes, one of the things that I like to do, I'm going to do a save as on this tool because I was just in here making modifications. I'm going to save as a template, and I'm calling my template detail conversion. I just changed my text style in here to a detail text. So my idea here is that if you work from a standard template, say if I just say new and I go to a construction template, architectural, structural, mechanical, whatever my field is, right? If I use one of those, I'm going to get extra levels and a lot of families that I don't actually need for template work. So most of the time I will start with the none template. That's the leanest template you can get inside of Revit, even though it has a none designation. I think it only has one level in it and has very few families as the least amount of components in it. So it's the smallest template you can start from. So basically that's what I did for this class is I started there, and then I actually, from that template, I added some line styles and I added a text style for detail conversion. So here under my detail conversion, that's what I want to open now, so that I'm using a template that I've made specifically for detail conversion. It's not something where I would go into a standard project. So being in a project and saying, hey, I want to do an insert of a CAD file and then import it and then tell it I want to explode it. If I do that, I'm going to do some crazy stuff to my visibility graphics. It's going to go into my object styles and give me line styles pretty much for every layer. Oops. Are my line styles in here? Nope. Go back. Manage additional settings. So as I bring those in, those line styles would show up here. I've made ones for this particular drawing called detail center line, detail halftone, detail hidden, thin, medium, and thick, and border. Those are the ones I've just created specifically for this template. So they're all called detail. I know that if they're in my details, they will have one of these names. If there's something else, maybe I haven't converted them yet, right? Because I might have lines, thin lines, medium lines, wide lines. Some of those things could exist theoretically in CAD. And when I bring them in, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between those and my detail lines in Revit. So by creating my own scheme for detail lines or underscore detail and the line weight that I want attached to them, thin, hidden, halftone, sort of colors, solids, center, hidden lines, those are being controlled in these line styles that are very specific to my details. And I can change colors and do whatever else I want to them at that point. It's just a matter that when I convert them to these styles, then I know that they're actually converted. I don't have any doubt in my mind whatsoever that some other line style could have come from CAD and might be within my detail setup. So also in that, I do have a text style that I generated. So if I start typing that and look at my style, it is, instead of text note, detail text 330 seconds. So that's the style I want to convert everything to in my base template. I also did a few more things in here, which are going to be a little bit of fun. I did make a master drafting view. I removed all other views, so I have no plan views whatsoever in my model. And I didn't do anything to my families, but I could still go back and do a final purge and make sure I've got everything that I don't need in my model currently. So with my master drafting view that I created, I just generated one. I did very little to it. It's a discipline coordination. I also added a subdiscipline parameter here in case I have like a electrical detail that's specifically for lighting. I could put it into a lighting detail, lighting subdiscipline or something like that, and then manage my browser with that extra parameter. So I have everything organized in here the best as I can. I also generated a view template, one for each discipline. So arch, electrical, my master, that is my main one that I started with, mechanical, plumbing, and structure. And currently I've got it set to the view scale being included as a thing to set. I'd probably want to go through those and disenfranchise all those so they're not something that's going to affect my view scale. If I want to have different view scales from AutoCAD coming in, then I need to change those independently. I probably shouldn't be controlling those in my view template, but I just generated this for fun. So just a couple of extra little things that we can do to manipulate the tools that we have. So our lines are being controlled basically by our line object styles. So I don't need to do really anything into my visibility graphics. Everything that I'm going to import is going to be black and white. So I'm not going to have any color on those objects unless I use my halftone, which would be gray. Occasionally in the past, I've done probably over 2,000 detail conversions personally in my career. And one of the things I did for an MEP firm probably 12 years ago was that the engineer or the owner of the company basically said, I want all of my details to look very, very similar to my plan views. So the concept he had was, if it is a roof penetration with a piece of duct or a pipe or something like that, or a vent, and I've got a detail for that, I want everything that's architectural and everything that's structural to be halftone, and everything that's my equipment that's going up through that roof to be black. I was like, that makes a lot of sense because it actually looks a lot like what you're actually doing in Revit, right? So I think we did, instead of a 50% halftone, it was more like a 70%. So it was a darker gray, but you could definitely tell the difference between MEP objects and architecture and structure, which was pretty cool. So just kind of think about what your drawings look like, how you're putting them together, and what you want things to look like to kind of define your line types, line weights, and colors. And once you've defined those well, they're going to be much more readable at that point, other than just everything black, all thin line, or all medium line, or something like that. So just a few considerations there. And we can control a lot of things with view templates. So if I bring a bunch of these in and suddenly I've got half of them are architecture and half of them are plumbing, then they should sort based on my my project browser definition, right? I could even add some extra parameters in here if there was like division codes or omni-class codes or something like that that I want to sort and group them by within this file. I wouldn't necessarily have to do that here, but it's a good place to set it up because this is a tool now that's a template that I can use anytime. And once I've actually done a final save on the work that I've done, then I could use my insert and import or insert from file into a file that would be my master details index, right? So I'm not carrying forward any junk that may be floating in this file. I can actually leave that in here, but suck the good details that I've just made into a master or even a temporary audit file or something like that, where an engineer comes back and looks at them and validates that it's up to code or whatnot before it actually goes into your master detail library. But here, this is just a place to process files. It's a thing that gets discarded every time. It's never something that I continue to build thousands of details in here, because when I import and explode, I'm bringing garbage in over and over and over again that I want to get rid of. So I'll use this as my temporary repository, put the stuff in that I want to see, and then once I'm done, I have the ability to just throw it away after I've taken the good stuff out of this into another file that may be for, like I say, auditing or a master file. All right, so the import process. If I do import CAD, excuse me, and go to my webinars folder in today's class and details and grab, say, the first one here. This is my manual method, right? So if I say my colors, I want those to go to black and white instead of preserve. If you're coming from AutoCAD with a black background, a lot of times if you want to keep your colors, you'll do invert. So light colors on a black background become dark colors on a white background at this point. We can preserve the colors if we want. I always do black and white because that's what I want to see on screen on the plotted page. Do I want all the layers in those? Do I want only the ones last visible? Or do I want to specify each time which layers to turn on and off as I import? I just do all most of the time. Auto detect my units. So if it's millimeters versus inches or yards or feet or whatever that might be coming in as, auto detect that for me. I always leave this correct lines that are slightly off axis turned on. If there's slight slopes or something like that on pipes or something, I may want to turn that off just because it may try to make them flat. I've never seen it actually make a change more than like maybe once or twice out of all the details that are done, so that's not usually an issue. And positioning, internal origin to origin, those are all good, right? So if I bring in this one detail, and I do that in my default master view, then I can actually see some of the things going on here. I can see I've got things that didn't quite line up on my text when it came through. There's another one over here. That's partially because of the M text and how it kind of referenced. If I would have had in this particular view an exploded text, that should have lined up a little better over here. So occasionally you'll get some instances like that where it's kind of hard to tell what's going on, especially if it's super busy. Again, if I do the M text explode first, usually that's going to, oops. Hopefully I wasn't muted, but it said I was. Anyway, I'm looking at my text and just seeing some of the ramifications of bringing this in. It all is one block right now, basically in here. And if I were to explode that, then I'm going to have individual objects to work with, all the lines, all the text. So all those components are ready for me to do something with, right? So if I'm going to do this entire thing manually, usually I'd go through and see just with a filter what I've got going on. So I've got some patterns, I've got some lines, depth point lines, which is this border inside AutoCAD, the actual kind of spacing between views. I've got depth points layer with things that were supposed to be turned off. So I got some lines, some more annotation lines for labels. Not sure why there's only one of those, but then I've got 18 text notes in there. So for manual conversion, most of the time, I'll do check none. I'll do like grab text notes. So I've done a selection set of all that. Change my detail text and note that my scaling is off here. So my 1.5 inch equals a foot is not good. If I change it back to 1/8 inch, then that was the proper scale, even though my naming convention down here said scale none. So I didn't have a reference at that point. I could find out what that scale should be fairly easily by changing that scale factor there and seeing that things come back to the same size as they were before. So 1/8 inch is going to work. All the rest of the line segments, like my depth points layer, if I don't want to keep those, I'll just do a selection set on those. hit my filter, check none, check my def point lines, and hit delete. Those are gone. I'm not going to keep my line segment there, my text, and notice here my text window. See how far that goes? If I have to zoom out that far and try to grab that little dot and drag that for each individual text entity from mtext, that's the part I hate about it. So it's just a pet peeve of mine. I'd much rather go back and fix things manually than have to deal with zooming in and out over and over and over again across my entire drawing. So if I take this label here and do a Control-C and get out of there for the moment, I can put that in my title and sheet, right? So that'll be what goes on sheet when I actually place it on a view. And I can get rid of the rest of this junk on the bottom. And then all my line work, I still need to do something with that, right? So filter and check none, grab all of my lines. Oops, not text notes, just my lines. And then choose a line style, like my detail thin. And then the majority of my detail is completely converted. I still have things to do with my text. So in here, again, there's this really long one because I didn't explode my mtext. If I do a Control-C here on that, maybe I'll just stick a brand new text entity up here. And now it's a piece of Revit text. I can get rid of that long thing that I don't like. It's another way to get rid of that. It is a hard return there, so I do have to fix that if I want to keep it all into one line. And then if I move that where it needs to go, then I have a piece of text that works, and then I can grab my leader and my fill pattern and choose a new arrowhead. And it looks like I've got a hard return there. So if I fix that, it should fix my leader. And now I'm pointing to the right thing. So if I did that a dozen more times, my entire detail is cleaned. So you can kind of see that takes a bit of time, right? It's probably about a 10-minute process to do the majority of all that cleaning. Really depends on the amount of entities that are actually in there. Do I have more things that are not going well? Like here, I still have a fill pattern of those lines. So if I had a diagonal ANSI 45 or something like that fill pattern that I could change out to, I don't have that symbol in here right now because I started from that none template. So I'd have to bring those things in, or I could go back in and explode each of these extra fill patterns and then have new line work that I need to go back and change to my, say, thin line again. And every time I see that there's one of these objects, I need to find out, is that still a explodable object of its own, or is it just line work again? So if I do a selection set and filter, I can tell by this name right here from the drawing name, there's still 19 things that I did not explode that I need to either filter out or do something with. Some of those will be the arrowheads. Probably the majority of them will be arrowheads, but every once in a while there'll still be a fill pattern that I need to change or swap out. So once I realize what the majority of those fill patterns are in my blank template, I could add those fill patterns in, maybe transfer them in from a different project or something like that, and then be able to just swap them out with the proper fill pattern style that I want, whether it's a left angle or right angle on the 45s or whatnot. I'd probably have to have individual patterns to make those work correctly, right? If I'm going to be doing thousands of these, I'm going to have a really, really good template pretty much right before I start. I'll do a couple of them just to tinker with them, find out what I need. And then everything that I truly need to keep, I'm going to manipulate that and make my template work for everything. So a little bit of pre-work can get you light years ahead in that case. In this particular one here, I've got a master drafting view. I would probably want to have put it on a real drafting view and given it the name of flashing vent pipe and or some sort of a code or number to organize it better in my project browser, right? But to do these things much quicker than that, then I need to start thinking about what are the tools that I have or could get that might actually help me do that better, because that's the general basis of getting those things converted. In the end, I really want all these objects to be real Revit objects and not have anything to do with, say, a text style that came from an AutoCAD file, right? So I have 3 text styles that came into this drawing: Simplex, Romans 9, Romans 10. So those came in with my AutoCAD file, when I exploded them, they became text styles. So if I bring in 50 CAD drawings and explode them out, and they all had 3 text styles, now I have 150 text styles in my drawing, each one with its own individual drawing number and font name. So that gets bulky and crazy. If I was in a standard project, right, and somebody imported 50 and exploded it, and now I've got 150 new text styles, how hard is it going to be for the regular average user in a normal drawing to go say, I'm going to go choose a new text style, hit my drop-down list, and have to sort through 150 plus the normal ones in the project. It's one of those reasons you don't want these to be exploded in a project view. So just a couple housekeeping pieces there, right? Always do this in a temporary file or a placeholder file that you can get away with doing whatever you want, and then save it maybe locally on your C drive and export it to a project folder, project drive, where you can place a new details item, Revit file or project that actually stores them correctly. So under my CTC software, this is where we start having some fun in doing details. And when I look at the free tools here, all these tools have the ability to be installed for 14 days free trial. So if you go to our website, you can find our BIM project suite, our BIM manager suite, and our BIM batch suite. Those are all downloads. Each one of them has some free tools for family loader and updater or exporters. This one's got some project cleaner tools, revision cloud removers, family tools. Under my free tools and the green tools, these are the tools that most people have on their desktop. There's a tool here called Detail Link. And with Detail Link, essentially what this does is it gives me the ability to add details or add images into my project. So if I were to browse to my details folder here and say, okay, now I can see all my CAD files that were in that details folder. And the first one I think I've already done, right? So if I grab the rest of these and say add selected files, I could continue to browse to as many folders as I want and continue to add them in to this selected area down below. Once I've got the ones that I want to be imported into my project browser, I'm going to say okay. And it's basically going to go through and say, here's your selected files. What do you want to do to them? So my view naming, I've got 3 options: automatically create new drafting views, select an existing drafting view for each file, or enter a new name for a new drafting view for each file. So either I can just auto create, I can already have the drafting views pre-created and select which one they go to as I import them, or I can say, make a new one, but let me name it every time that it imports. So I'm going to just say automatically create, because I can always go back and make changes very quickly later, right? Am I going to import or am I going to link? So in this case, I'm going to import because I do want to explode them and change them to Revit objects. How's my positioning going to work? Center to center, origin to origin. I'll do origin to origin. What are my colors going to be? Preserve, invert, or white, black and white, right? So these are the same dialog boxes basically as I just had when I did it manually. Am I doing all layers or visible layers? I don't have the option to specify here because this is an automated process, and then auto detect my units. The last part here is for images. So if I did want to import an image and maybe change my resolution, I could do that with this tool also. But this part of the dialog, this upper half, and these drawing options, these are the main things I want for my CAD details. So I'll hit import link. It's just going to generate those for me. So now it names them the same name as my CAD file and drops them in my project browser all in one session. So if I had 50 of them in there, I'd now have 50 views all with CAD details dumped into them. So I kind of wish there was a little checkbox within that tool that said explode all those views as it was imported. So then I wouldn't have to do that process after the fact. But in this case, I'm just going to come in and hit my explode on each of these. So I do have to open the views, explode each one before I can actually do any changes, right? Doesn't take a whole lot of time, but it does take a moment. If I could just mass select them all at once. I was trying to figure out a way to do that earlier just to see if there was a way to do a mass selection of all CAD details, but there does not seem to be a way to do it currently. Even with the quick select tool and some other stuff that I have available to me, I wasn't able to get it this morning. So open 9 views, exploded all my details. Now I can actually do stuff to them, right? So if I were to want to, say, get rid of all of my lines that are on my def points layer. So I've got a line style that's def points. This is another thing I haven't tried yet, but I think it should work. If I go to my free tools again, there's a quick select tool. And I can do the entire project all at once and look for categories. So hopefully I have lines in here. I'm not sure I will or will not, but there's lines and parameter line style equals def points, right? So those are things I can do with a quick select tool. I can look through my entire project. I could look through just the active view or the current selection. So in this case, I'm doing the whole project because I've got 9 more views there, right? That I want to go find that def points layer and get rid of it. So once I've selected it, looks like it cleared my selection after I went back up to project. So lines and parameter line style equals def points. So if I say update selection set, now it says I've got 72 lines across those, right? So if I have 9 views with a double line across each one, that's 18 times 9. I'm not sure why there's 72, but it should show me if I expand these out that these are all system families and types and they're all detail lines by definition. And if I just say OK and hit delete, they should be gone out of each individual view. All those are just disappeared right off the top, right? So as long as I know what the line styles are and whatnot, I should be able to do replacements of those fairly quickly or get rid of items very quickly. So that's a good option to use. So if I need to also like do something special with text or something like that, I should be able to do all that with quick selecting objects and being able to do all of them across all views at the same time. In the case of styles that we can actually change, that's another area that we can do with the Type Swapper that comes in the BIM Manager suite. So if I do Type Swapper and I look for, say, text types, right? So maybe I want to see if I can select all of these CAD styles all at once. It's not going to let me checkbox them all at once. Most of the time in these dialog boxes, I have an option to checkbox everything and then just remove things that I don't want. In this case, I don't see that in this particular tool, and it didn't let me mass select and select the checkbox. So I will take the extra 15 seconds or so and go through all of these text styles, right? All at one time. And I know I can do a selection and change them all over here. If I just hit my little drop down arrow, I want to change those all to detail text 330 seconds. Just gonna do it. Oh man, it's trying to make me a liar today. Let's see if I can do a smaller selection at one time. I did this earlier and it gave me one with the greatest of ease, but it seems like it's deselecting on me now. So why it's being mean to me, I don't know, but it is. It's probably because I'm in demo mode. If I wasn't in a demo, Murphy's Law says it would work just fine, right? But even if I had to do this all individually like I'm doing now, I'm basically making a script that says, go through the entire drawing, find all those instances of all those text styles that exist in DWGs, and turn them into a detail text 330 seconds. I can also look at my largest categories by number as well. So if I had a couple of them here that were 1,000 strong, but there was a bunch of them that were just onesie twosies, maybe I would do the thousands of them very quickly and then go back and individually go back and check and see which ones are which, what's going on. I can also do line styles. So everything that's on my detail, there's 2,300 of those, right? I'm going to change those to my my line style of detail 1 thin. Got another one from a 0 layer, quite similar. Just choose the right ones. Detail 1 thin. What else do I have lots of? Those are the ones I converted already on that first one, right? Got 172 on M1 layer. I'm gonna change those again. maybe the M1 and the M3 are ones that I want medium or thick lines on. So maybe I'll change those to be darker than their other counterparts. So detail 5 thick. So anything that's got lines that I want to change, I want to make sure that I have the checkbox turned on. 0. Thought I changed that one, but maybe not. Detail 1 thin. There we go. And once I've got those checkboxes all filled out, anything I see zeros on, I don't really care about because they don't really exist with stuff on them, right? But anything that has actual GNO label, those ones there are probably the lines between my detail name and the scale. So maybe I want to go back and find those individually later and delete those because I want to get rid of that line also. But here with my text styles, my line styles, both of those are ready to do swaps. If I had a pattern line or something like that that came in, I don't have any that have a count for patterns, so I don't need to deal with any of those currently. But if I had like hidden lines or center lines or something like that from my CAD files, I could go back and change those to a different line style as well. Fill patterns, if I know that I'm going to map one style to another, so solid fill, my crosshatch, if I had a crosshatch in here, I could swap those out right here. And if there are any materials that came in, I could also swap those as well. So anything from dimension styles, text styles, line patterns, fill patterns, and materials, all those can be changed in one dialog box. Not only that, I can also save a selection and try to run that same routine again later. So kind of nice to be able to have a tool that I can run a selection set of things on and then just hit my swap command. And then hopefully I'll get some sort of report here. Let's see, textiles, swap. So success in my textiles. I didn't do all of them, but I did a bunch, right? Line styles, swap. Looks like it did the majority of all those. And line patterns, I didn't do. Fill patterns, I didn't do. And materials. So with my type swapper, I can go through these things very, very quickly and make sure they're all up to date. These were some of the ones I didn't actually change, but maybe I can find some that did. I know I changed like 8 of them, so they should be in there. I just don't know which ones I grabbed. Yeah, type swapper is going to be my fastest way to do it in most cases. I could also go through and find objects that are text or whatnot with my quick select. So anything that didn't get changed out, I can still come back in and say, look for, see if I got text styles in here, I should. Text, where's text? Text notes, here we go. And we'll add all text notes. That shows me I've got 240 instances. So everything that's detailed text currently, maybe I uncheck all those, right? So that's no longer in my selection set. If I say okay, and I've still got all these selected, same thing, go down and find my detailed text 330 seconds. Suddenly all of them change. If my text all disappears, that's probably because my scale is not right, right? So another thing I can do is grab all these guys and say, I really want these all to be on the same view template. So if I were to change to, say, my plumbing view template and change my scale of that to 1/8 inch, it's going to go through and fix everything very quickly, right? Across all the views. So between my free tools for quick select and my type swapper tools to swap out things that I want to change, I can do some massive work very, very quickly. So the last things I need to do on each of these would be on each individual component of mtext. I would go back and make sure that this large, long window that I despise typically, stretch it all back to a normal size, or just copy and paste it into a new piece of text, move it back where it goes, and then go find my line work and my arrowhead and actually do the delete on that component, and then draw a new arrow off the side of this one. And again, this one is a annoyance to me, so I'm just going to do a Control C, maybe make a new one here, backspace that off so it's just 2 lines. Come on. Get rid of that one. Put a new arrow in there, configure the type and direction where I want it to come off of. So if it's this amount of text, I can probably do that in 15 minutes or less total, all things considered. So 15 minutes per detail, where it might have been a half an hour before, is quite a good trade-off as far as what you can and can't do inside detail conversion. In the end here, if I want to continue to use this particular file over and over and over again and have it continue to add lots and lots and lots of details here, I might also want to get rid of, say, all those additional text styles. So whether I purge those because they're no longer used or whether I do something different, there's some other tools here at the project processor that lets me do things like process files, do things like clean sheets, views, templates, filters, links, imports, images, line styles, line patterns, fill patterns. So I can tell it which ones to get rid of from a list and tell them to remove them from my file. Even do a master purge basically here. If I turn those off and do that one, fill patterns, line tile, symbols. This particular purge is a mass purge, so it does the purge over and over again until it gets all of the nested elements in between all these as well. So if I was looking for text styles, it's not in this list currently, so it may not purge text styles directly from here. But again, if I have the criteria of things that I either want to clean and or purge out of here, I even have the ability to do swaps like I was doing earlier. So if I pick on swaps, I have text styles, line styles, patterns, fill patterns. I could use this tool to do even the things I was doing in the blue tools for the Type Swapper. And the pink tools are actually cheaper than the MIM Manager suite. So it might be a better way to give power to end users, interns, or whoever might be doing the cleanup. To run sets of routines here, which also can have a new configuration, load a configuration or save a configuration. So if you can use the same exact tools over and over again, save it and then load it each time you want to run it. And you might have 2 or 3, one that does the swap first and then open another one. It does clean and purge and wipes out all the junk that's been collected at that point. So quite a few tools in our arsenal, depending on what your best use case is. For these lower ones down here, I did do the explode text on these, so you can see when I pick on those ones, especially as single lines of text, don't have the long stretch all the way across to eternity. And the majority of them always align correctly, whereas the one I did first on the main drafting view, that one being an M-text style, it even pushed itself away from my leader at that point. That's some of those reasons why I want to remove some of the problems in my AutoCAD files first, so that they become easier to clean up when I'm back in my main models. So all those show up nice and clean and pretty. Now, if I get something like this where it's multiple line, I'll probably end up doing copy and paste all into one text field from each of these, and then discard the 3 individual line segments and redraw my arrow. Do we have any other questions on any of this that I've gone through so far? We've got about 5 or 10 minutes left in the session today. I haven't seen any other questions in the chat. Give you a few moments to respond if you like, or if anybody else wants to add any additional tips and tricks for the people who are attending today. If you've done conversion before and you have a method that wasn't explained today, if you want to share that, that's always a good thing to let other people know how to do things better whenever possible. If it's a trade secret and you want nobody else to be able to do it your way, I understand. I don't have any other questions yet. I was hoping that somebody would just start typing away and say, hey, Bruce, what about this? Here we go. How can AI help automate the process, for example, shrinking all the text boundaries? Will recording the session be available to watch later? So second question, yes, it will be available. If you go to our YouTube channel, then you will be able to find this probably within the next several days to a week. Every once in a while, our marketing team will clean up dead spots and things like that in the videos to make sure that it's watchable if there was something that wasn't appropriate or was bad or slip of the tongue or something like that. Sometimes they'll clean that stuff up and it might take a couple days, but usually within a week, you can be able to watch those again on our ATG YouTube channel. So as far as the AI, if you were to run, say, maybe Dynamo scripts or machine learning, that's an interesting question. That may be a way that you could, it's kind of hard with the line segments and stuff when it's exploded, but I was thinking if there was a way to tell like a Dynamo script or something like that to go back and rebuild on a new piece of text, the leader and arrowhead association or something like that, that would save a ton of time cleaning that up. One person says the project processor tool is very handy. Yes, I agree with that. That's especially for when you're doing handoff of any projects, being able to clean up in views and sheets and view templates and all that, and not hand that off with your project. It's also quite cool. If anybody wants to see some of our tools in a demo situation, so any of those blue, pink, or green tools, those are things that we can definitely show you guys. Just contact your sales rep or contact ATG USA and click on our contact button and say, hey, I would love to see those in a demo. That's something we do on a fairly regular basis. We do custom demos for almost all the tools. Another question, when half-toning lines, is it better to use override graphic in view and select the halftone option or have a separate line style that is color gray? Personally, I like the separate line style. It's just a matter of what is that halftone going to be for? Is it a different phase? Is it a different discipline? Those would be typical reasons why I would color something gray or halftone. If you wanted to have a arch/struct halftone, if you're doing MEP, so anything architecture or structure uses that particular line style and it's color gray, you could do that as well. To me, if you use a color gray, then you get to choose the hue, right? Which is different than a halftone, which just halftones by 50% typically. So if it were true, just a reason to use the halftone side of it, if I go to add-ins, not add-ins, sorry, manage, additional settings, and look at my halftone settings. If I change my halftone brightness, I can make halftone darker or lighter inside that dialog box, right? So I can make that a change, but that changes the entire project. So in the case of a line style in a detail view, if I want a light halftone versus a dark halftone, I'd probably do that with a line style instead of changing the halftone of the entire project all at once. Just because I might want some differentiation in a detail that I wouldn't see otherwise. Maybe there's some depth or something that I want to show, like foreground of this pump well, the front lines or the side lines are going to be a dark gray, and then the background, maybe there's something embedded in the back wall of that or something that's a sensor or temperature or something like that. Maybe that's a lighter thing because it's further away. I could do that with lines that are lines by line weight and line color, right? Where do we get the CTC software? Go to atgusa.com and you will find our products page has a bunch of CTC software. We carry quite a few of them. The ones that are on my screen here today under CTC software are going to be the suites of products. So the BIM project suite has the quick tools, the quick select, and the detail link to get the details to blast in quickly like I did. The manager suite has the Type Swapper tool. Anything that is the darker colors, dark green, dark blue, dark pink, those are paid tools. Anything that's under the free tools would be the lighter color tools. And those you get to keep forever, whether you buy the rest of the packages or not. How often are the tools updated? Usually every year we get an update because of Revit's updates. So there'll be a new version every year in that case, usually within 1 or 2 months of the release date of the Autodesk products. And those are on you purchase them once and you have a maintenance fee thereafter, and the maintenance fee is dirt cheap. So it it almost doesn't make any sense not to have the tools realistically. The cost is very, very low. Using gray line styles, when we print using black and white, the gray lines remain black and not half-toned. Black. Usually a gray line should actually be gray when you're using black and white settings, but if you have a serious question on that, how do we make that work, and you're not getting it for some reason, if you are an ATG customer, we have free tech support. I would post that to one of our tech support windows and see if we can get an answer for you in that case. How do you use the project snapshot exporter tool? That's in my my data suite. That's a convoluted piece of software there because you have to have a SQL server to use that particular tool, but it does exist in Model Compare inside the project suite. Essentially, you can make snapshots of files. Basically, whenever you want to open it, make a snapshot, and then compare it to one snapshot to another and actually have a full report of everything that's been changed. And if you want to see that, like I said, get with us and we'll do a demo for you on it. Is there a display counter that shows the difference of a detail before and after exploding and after editing to help users manage the day, the size of the individual objects or drawings? If you're trying to like figure out what's been changed and what hasn't, I would probably just go in and change the color on all of my detail information. So everything that was black before, as I convert it, changes to a magenta or something like that, and then just remove that color designation after you're done. So whether that's a filter or whether that's a visibility graphics thing or something like that, that could be easily done to show you what's been changed and what hasn't. Data size display, helping keep details to a minimal size. Number of lines basically is going to kind of be your basis of how large the detail is realistically. So if I explode everything out and I've got 15,000 tiny little lines, my details when it imports is 2 megabytes versus a half a megabyte on a regular one. That's just going to be drawing control and your standards. So the more you have a standard, the more you control things with, say, view templates and whatnot to get the best case scenario out of each of your views. That's always going to be your end goal as you're doing processing. And usually you're going to probably want to process at least 50 to 100 kind of manually, figuring out what you have in CAD across each discipline that you're working with, how many different things that you can import that don't explode themselves. So it'll be like extra little valve pieces and things in here that come in as blocks that have to be exploded even 2, 3, and 4 times to get them exploded all the way down just to line work. So things like that are always going to be cumbersome, really depending on how your CAD blocks come in. But looks like I am just about out of time for today. Great questions, everybody. Glad you guys stuck around. If you want to bring more questions to us or whatnot, again, ATG USA, ask your questions, grab your sales rep, and even see if we can get you on like a custom demo of some of this stuff to give you better ideas on how to do workflows that will make things easier for you. And if you don't have the time and ability to do it yourself, ask about doing our team augmentation where we can actually help do the work for you and then submit that back. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions and I have run out of time, so I'm going to end our seminar here for today. For anything that you guys need AEC wise, contact us and let us know, and we'll be glad to see what we can do to help you out. Thanks for attending.